For me, compound interest is the most interesting of the two different types. And it is critical that you understand the difference between compound and simple interest. Notice that with simple interest, you only earn interest based on the initial amount that is invested. This means that you cannot obtain interest on the interest earned. Similarly, when you are paying off a loan, interest is always calculated on the full original loan amount and not on the decreasing balance. Now, that's quite a mouthful to understand, so let's just go through this again. Simple interest, if you put your money in the bank on simple interest, it means that you just get interest on the initial amount that you deposited. Doesn't matter how long your money's been in the bank or grown, you just get interest on the initial amount. All right? Likewise, if you take a loan on simple interest and even after you've paid off pieces of your loan, you still pay interest on the original amount, not on the reducing balance. So simple interest is really not the way to go. Right, so what is the way to go? Let's have a look at what the alternative is. Okay, so taking our first example, if we take 100 Rand and we invest it for 3 years, where interest is calculated at 10% per annum, and we are taking this now at simple interest. All right, that means that we put in our 100 Rand, we leave it for the year, so in December we go to our bank, we've now got 10% of 100 Rand, which is 10 Rand, so at the end of that year we've now got 110 Rand. In the second year, they don't take into account that you've got 110 Rand. They just think you've got 100 Rand. So in the second year, you again get only 10 Rand interest. So at the end of the second year, you've now got 120 Rand. Right? Now, the third year, they once again ignore the fact that you've got 20 Rand interest, and they just take the 100 Rand that you initially deposited, and it grows by 10%, which is 10 Rand. And so at the end of that, you've now got 130 Rand. And that is how your money grows with simple interest. Okay, however, if you put your money into most financial institutions, they don't work on simple interest. So let us imagine that in January you put in 100 Rand and it's a 10% compound interest per annum. By the end of the first year, you've grown that money by 10 Rand, exactly the same as simple interest. So at the end of 1 year, it doesn't matter whether you've used simple or compound. However, at the beginning of the second year, this is where things start changing. They actually take into account that you've got 110 Rand now in the bank. Not the 100, but 110. And they now grow that 110 Rand by 10%. Now, obviously, 10% of 110 is 11 Rand. So you've made 1 extra Rand in that year only. Not a lot, but if it was on 1,000,000 Rand, it would be substantial. So at the end of the second year, instead of having 120, you've now got 121. And of course, at the beginning of the third year, they take into account that you've got 121 Rand, not the initial 100, 121, and they grow that by 10%. And you get 12 Rand and 10 cents interest on that, rather than the actual 10 Rand that you got before. And you can see that by compounding, what you're actually doing is you're getting interest on your interest. So it pays you to leave your money in the bank if you're getting this kind of interest. Whereas simple interest, at the end of the year, whether you took your 10 Rand out or not, doesn't have any effect. They only give you the interest on the initial amount deposited. Okay, I hope that that makes sense. And so we're going to go on to the very first example. Okay, so let's start off with an example to see if you can catch on to what I've been explaining. Right, we're on page 104 at the bottom. It says, determine the compound interest obtained on an investment of 5,000 Rand at a rate of 14% per annum invested for 3 years. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually imagine that our initial amount in this example is 5,000 Rand. All right, our interest rate that they are talking about is 14%. So we know now that that's 14 over 100, or of course 0.14. And now we are going to be investing for 3 years, so n is equal to 3. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start this investment. So imagine that we go out, and I'm going to say at time t0, I'm going to go out and I'm going to deposit my 5,000 Rand into the bank. All right? Remember the formula that we were working with, so let's not change anything at the moment. And at this point in time, the formula that we're going to use is P equals 1 plus NI. And that's going to allow us to see what our money grows to after 1 year. So we put in our 5,000 and we go 1 plus. We're going to leave it in only for 1 year, and we're going to grow it by 14%. Now, we can go to our calculator, but I'm just going to take it and write it down from the book, and it is 5,700 Rand. So this is at the end of 1 year. Right, now remember we are wanting to leave it in the bank for 3 years. So at the beginning of the next year, all right, this is during the first year it's grown from 5,000 to 5,700. Now if it was simple interest, I would take my 5,000 again, because they're not interested in giving me interest on my interest. But because it's compound interest, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take the 5,700 and put it into the bank. So can you see? I've taken the end amount from the first year and used it as my initial amount for my second year. And I'm going to grow that for a further year. And again, that lands up as an accurate amount of 6,498 Rand. Okay, so that is what our money has now grown to at the end of 2 years of investment. We need it at the end of 3 years of investment. So again, we don't take the 5,000, which grew to 5,700, which grew to 6,498. We now take the 6,498 and we invest that for 1 further year. And again, we land up with a total of 7,407,72. Right, so can you just have a look at that, reflect on that and see what is happening? In the first year, I only got 700 Rands worth of interest. You can see that this is actually 798 Rand worth of interest. So you've got interest on your interest. And likewise, this is definitely more than 700 Rands worth of interest, because you're now getting interest on the money that you got in the second year as well as the money that you got in the first year. And this is why this is such a clever way to invest, and it's to your benefit if you leave your money in the bank for longer. Right, the question actually asked us to determine the compound interest obtained. So in other words, what we need to now do is we need to actually work out how much interest did we actually receive. And so that means that I'm going to have to work out the final amount that was available to me at the end of 3 years and take away the initial amount that I invested. So that's not going to be too much of an effort, because the values I have are 7,407 and 72, and I need to subtract my 5,000, which was my initial investment, which is 2,407,72. Now remember, if you had left this money in at simple interest, we would have been getting 700 Rand each and every year, so we would have only been getting 2,100 Rand if we had been investing at simple interest. So this way is definitely not the option to choose if you are given a choice by your bank manager. Now, I'm sure that all of us could perhaps spend the time and the energy in working out something like this if it was only over a 3-year period. But imagine that we had to do this year on year on year for 10 years or 20 years. It would really be a stop-start effort.